Hi folks, I'm Neal Barton. Yes, as I told you last week, I have a podcast. This is number 2. Today we're talking about politics, current events, the Rolling Stones, and George Washington. Yes, we are, and it all starts right now.
Now, hey, so long, civility. Who's you gonna get? What's you gonna get? Some wonderful, amount of chemicals everywhere. That's something everywhere.
Hi folks, I'm Neal Barton. Yes, I do have a podcast. Everyone has the right to my opinion, also the opinion of Dr. James Newsom of UT Tyler. Welcome once again. We always have you on as our political expert, but this is a podcast. We can get a chance to kind of relax a little bit. Producers are not yelling at us. We can take our time and have a good time, so thanks for being with us.
We can let our hair down that we don't have.
Yeah, exactly. That's part about getting older, like the Rolling Stones. We'll get to that for a second. So what are you teaching right now, the Youth of Society out there at UT Tyler?
We are teaching diplomatic history, colonial American history, the history of technology, and History 1302.
Technology is so new. Does it have any history? I mean, especially now.
Well, if you ask a historian, we're going to go back to the beginning of time. In fact, when I created the class, the history of technology and innovation, we met with the engineering people and said, where do you want us to begin this class? And one of the engineering professors said, well, let's start with Imhotep in ancient Egypt.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, whoa. First off, American history.
That's not us.
Yeah,
I don't know how well I would do in that class or whatever. Okay, politics right now and history in Washington, D.C. The Mueller report, you were on television with me the day it was dropped. At that moment we pontificated anyway, even though like us and everybody else had no idea what was in it. Now we do, if you believe the 4 pages that were rendered. So what say you about that?
I think it's total vindication, especially when you couple it with what Attorney General Barr has said, giving Trump no collusion, no obstruction. He's off the hook and ready to run and take it to those who engineered this crisis.
Well, once again, I know a couple of television networks and journalists or whatever who really made some money off that. They got some ratings off that. They want to parse what's going to be issued by William Barr. You got Gerald Nadler, who's head of the House Judiciary Committee, who's basically saying, we want it today, I'm going to subpoena it. But I think we all know, I mean, I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on, with the political game, you bring it back out, you parse it, you find crossed T's, undotted I's or whatever, and you make another case that there was collusion and there was obstruction, right?
Well, here's the hypocrisy. I mean, the Democrats did not want the full Starr report released in the 90s. And so they did everything they could to block. But now we've got to release the whole report because the public has a right to know. And the Republicans...
Well, that's what they're saying is, we bought and paid for it, so where is it?
Right. And there's some validity to that. If you want to clear the air, let the report out there. Let the chips fall where they may.
Of course, there's going to be some redactions, and when that happens, any political expert will go, now look, it's redacted, there's something very important or whatever, but on the other hand, I have heard, I've only driven past a law school, I have heard that anytime you have, a grand jury or whatever, you can't release somebody's name if they have not been charged. You can't do it.
So you've got a lot of potential federal violations in just throwing this out to the public. So the Attorney General is taking the right approach, and we need to go through this thing, make sure we don't unmask serving agents and things like that.
Exactly.
So, but that gives the opposition party the opportunity to throw more mud.
And that brings us to this, speaking of throwing mud, Uncle Joe, Sloppy Joes, all the kisses, the hugs, and whatever. And so everyone's wondering, where's all this coming from? And again, you go back to the Kavanaugh hearings, and those, our friends on the left, are saying every woman needs to be heard, every woman needs to be believed. But yesterday, when I was researching this for our podcast, our award-winning podcast, no award so far, but we know we will, our award-winning soon-to-be podcast, that they're all saying, come on, it's Joe. I mean, there it is. Oh, there you go, right there. And now, I think it was Nancy Pelosi or another leader was saying, no, Joe, just keep your arms straight. You can't do this. I mean, come on, it's him. But we all know if Joe played for another team, that Joe right now would really be catching heck.
There was a meme I saw yesterday with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi.
By the way, I'm having some podcast coffee. It's delicious.
And the meme was, Keep your hands above the waist
Yeah.
there, buddy.
And what I was reading yesterday is they were saying that they think that it's the Bernie Sanders campaign that is releasing all this because Joe Biden, by the way, just in case you live in a cave and don't know what I'm talking about, is getting ready to enter, and they say it's Bernie Sanders, and Bernie's saying, absolutely not, I wouldn't do such a thing like this.
As many candidates as they have in the mix, this is going to get vicious.
Oh yeah, look at what happened with the Republicans last go around.
That's right, and there's potential for more Democrats. This is a feeding frenzy of shark proportion.
Mm-hmm. And it is kind of funny.
Politics?
It's the same, synonymous. And just a couple of weeks ago, the media was in love with Beto O'Rourke, and now they're in love with the young man who's the mayor in Indiana. This is Fort Wayne. So
right.
Today they're in love with him. Do you know anything about him? I don't mean to catch you unprepared.
I heard a passing few comments, but
They are in love with
when
him.
their love affair departs.
Well, there's a long time to be in love, I'll tell you that. So anyway, other things, we talked about some such in current events. You got to be my age. I think I'm a little bit older than you or whatever, but the Rolling Stones.
Let's go with that.
This is very interesting to me because Mick Jagger is going to be having heart valve surgery in New York City on Friday, and we wish him well. I hope he does great. But this is ironic, not funny, but it's ironic. If you know anything about Mick, ever since maybe the 70s, he's been a vegan. He probably eats a handful of English peas every day. He drinks tepid water. He works out. He's having heart replacement surgery as opposed to his mate, Keith Richards, who yesterday there's a picture of him up on his balcony, shirtless, having me cocktail. And I mean, look at him. He's done everything wrong. He admits he's done everything wrong. He's fine. Someone said, "Is that really Prince Charles?" But no, it's not. It's Keith Richards, and you can see a bit of a. I'm telling you, he's in his 70s. I'm in my 50s, and the punch comes. I'm telling you, you got to work out pretty hard to get rid of the punch. But there he is, I guess. And a lovely woman, I guess, next to him. Maybe that's keeping him healthy as well.
His wife.
Is that his wife?
That's what the caption says.
Okay.
Patty, his wife.
Yeah, well, I guess she's keeping him.
You have to wonder, did he pose for those pictures?
Oh, he knows.
Purposeful.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you should have lived it up like me.
Oh, that is true. And something else, politics is everything. It's in everything. But you got those lads. And I'm sure at least Mick Jagger has dual citizenship. I don't know this, but I think he does.
Right.
So he had a chance to have his heart valve surgery done, of course, over in the UK, where they have the single payer system. Stand in line. It's free. Why would, even if I looked yesterday, he's worth $363 million according to the internet, which is always right. But he could write a check for it. But he chooses to have his heart surgery where? And why would that be? Come on.
The United States.
Exactly. Why would that be?
Better health care.
Why would that be?
Because it is, at least for the moment, consumer-driven, profit-driven, and better.
Yeah, we should have a game show called Why Would That Be? Where we just keep making whatever. But anyway, I just found that kind of interesting that he's having it done in New York City, and I'm not trying to make fun of his heart procedure because that's not funny.
No.
And I wish him well. He's a rock icon, love him, but he's having it done in New York City, instead of the UK where it would be free. And well, you know how that goes.
Well, you never know. He may decide to take the Keith Richards approach afterwards and needs to be closer to the good cocktails.
All right. So anyway, that brings us, we all should be more civil, which leads us now to George Washington, the aforementioned and promised George Washington. So I noticed you're donning a George Washington-like hat. It's very smart. Where did you get that?
I ordered this from a company in Williamsburg, Virginia, and they have a whole variety of them. Because, if you fold this out,
I should wear that. My wife would love this when we go out to eat, to go to the restaurant and have the George Washington hat on.
I bet going out to eat with you is quite the experience. I read your posts on Facebook and your restaurant reviews.
Well, I'm just telling you, it should be good. I don't go out to eat very often, much to my wife's chagrin.
And so when I do, she's probably quite happy about that, actually.
When I do, by God, I want it to be good. It better be good, at least halfway decent. I mean, the one time I think you're talking about is, I think I waited 45 minutes to be served, and after a while, it doesn't matter how good the food would be.
Right.
It's going to taste bad as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, back to George Washington. Rules for civility. I mean, we were taught George Washington as kids. I hope they're still teaching George Washington now. Of course, he was taught as almost like a deity. I wish we would have known more about the man. Did he ever say, "I cannot tell a lie"?
Not that I know of.
Did he have a cherry tree?
No.
But he had wooden teeth?
Yes.
He had wooden teeth. That's
He
why
had
he was
wooden
sort of
teeth.
funny. But he was quite a remarkable man because he wanted, pardon me, he wanted, and you're the history professor, you stop me if I'm wrong. I know you won't. I'll give you a grade. But he wanted to be, he loved being a farmer.
He did.
And he begrudgingly became a politician. And so every morning he would get up, he would ride in on his horse, the whole thing or whatever. And I can remember, was it him or Ben Franklin or whatever, they all felt the same way. They were arguing about where to put the capital and what to do and how long you should be serving as a politician.
Right.
And I think it was George Washington, maybe it's Benjamin Franklin, you're the academician. But they all said, let's give it 2 years because no one in their right mind would want to be in swampy Washington, whatever, for more than 2 years. Boy, were they wrong.
Boy, were
they
they
didn't
wrong.
realize what a cottage industry, being a 2-year congressman making $174K but leaving a millionaire would be.
How does that work?
I don't
With
know.
the family budget, I would like to.
I've heard somebody one time explain it, and it's over my head. I have to write it down. But basically, you get on this board, you get this and this and this, pack money, whatever, and you walk out of there a multi-millionaire when you're the entire time you're telling people, I only make this much money.
Right.
This is how much money I make or whatever.
Which is not a lie. It is true. However, it's not the whole story.
What is the whole story?
Well,
and now
they-
you know
they
the
have
rest of
other-
the story. Yeah.
They have other ways.
Exactly. So George Washington, so once again, so years ago, he gave us rules for civility. I'm telling you, if our society ever needed rules for civility, it is right now. From what I understand, he went and he basically hand-wrote this. There you go.
Right.
He hand-wrote this from the friars or the Catholic Church or whatever.
Apparently, this had been around since 1595, and this was often used as a primer to practice your handwriting.
Yeah.
And so he
But
wrote
these are
it
great
down and
rules.
preserved it. But
Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those present. Now I'm telling you, that is fantastic.
on.
You can walk into any crowd and it's kind of like, sir, quit that. When in company, do not put your hands or on any part of the body not usually discovered.
Which I was reading this to students earlier, and they said, "Well, what does that mean?" And it's like, well, if it's not a part of the body that's generally exposed, don't touch it in mixed company or in a group.
Exactly. Show nothing to your friend that may affright. Oh, George.
That could go so many different directions.
And then number 4 is what I love. In the presence of others, sing not to yourself. In other words, don't hum or sing. And we've all been kind of guilty about that, but is there anybody who's more annoying than somebody who hums and is always singing?
Or drums with your fingers or feet. I had looked up some different areas, and on Mental Floss, they pulled 12 of George Washington's rules that are applicable today, and they took that one and said, if all the world abided by this rule, wouldn't public spaces be more pleasant?
Oh, yes.
But take that a step further. Okay, drumming the fingers, but what about people talking on their cell phones in restaurants while you're trying to eat?
Oh, I know. I know.
You know? Or silence your phone when you go into a presentation or a theater or...
That's what gets me. What gets me is I don't really talk. I use my phone a lot. I don't talk on my phone a lot. But it is amazing to me, even though it's illegal in Tyler where I live, people who are on their cell phones, or you go to a restaurant, and people are speaking loudly.
Yes.
And it's like, can you knock that off? Because if my wife calls or work calls or whatever, and I have to take the call, I will get up and walk out. Or someplace where I can speak in a normal tone and I can whatever.
Or you're saying, hang on, I'll get outside.
Yeah, exactly. But some people, that makes no difference. I mean, they'll sit there in the next table at the restaurant and they'll talk about their doctor's appointment at length more than I want to know.
We were on a field trip to Dallas. Went to the Holocaust Museum. I took my 11-year-old daughter.
How was that, by the way? Is that good? Must be pretty powerful.
It was not as emotional as we had anticipated. I had prepared, 11-year-old girl, I prepared her, and it was a field trip with other students.
Absolutely.
And tying the two together, instead of coming back to where we live, we went to the Cheesecake Factory, and she and I had a daddy-daughter dinner, and there's this guy at another table just chattering away on the phone, and I'm asking her questions about what did you feel about the Holocaust Museum? What did you, and her reply was priceless. It was like, a great museum, what's next? That it didn't have the emotional impact. Now, to be fair to the Holocaust Museum, they just built their new facility and they're in transition, so they may have already started moving things to the new facility.
Let me ask you a question. Are they really nowadays in school? Are they? I would hope. Okay, I would hope that they were still teaching the Holocaust. I would hope that they are, because I had read before that they were not.
Well, I don't know in the general classes at the grade school level if they are, but I know in my daughter's gifted and talented class, that was the purpose of the field trip. And by the way, to give Ms. Eberhardt a pat on the back, they not only went to the Holocaust Museum followed by the JFK Museum, but this semester they're doing a show trial, a trial in a real courtroom of Nazi war criminals.
Oh, wow.
And the kids have to memorize scripts.
Oh, wow.
And they have prosecutors and a real judge is going
And maybe
to
they'll
sit.
see that film Judgment at Nuremberg, which I thought was quite good, quite powerful. Back to George Washington.
Yes.
Here's something else I think we didn't know about him. First of all, for his time, he was an extraordinary man, not only mentally but physically. Because back then, if you even go and look at like World War I uniforms to see how little that most men were back then, George Washington was 6 feet 4 inches tall. He was huge. He was thick, but from what I also know about him, he was very light on his feet. He could dance and ride a horse like nobody's business.
And if the story's true, now, in no way am I saying George Washington was a ladies' man.
No, but
Martha
they
Washington
loved him.
and Martha Washington was not always there, and at formal events, General Washington. He was apparently quite the dancer, and he loved to dance. It
goes back to this. This is one of Neal's rules for just getting along with women. Women love to dance. Amy Noble's one of our texts. Do women love to dance, right? Women love to dance. Women love a man who dances. I'm not saying that there has to be a romantic thing or whatever. There's a friend of mine, Robert Thornton, did weather here for years. Robert Thornton can dance like a coach whip. He's almost elastic or whatever. And I'm telling you, you go to a party, event, or whatever with Robert Thornton, he'll dance with every woman in there. And women love it. And women love George Washington because of that.
Well, the important thing is, especially having gone to seminary, is did you keep a Bible's width between you and your dancing partner?
Oh, I guess, I don't know. I guess we should have to do that.
And of course,
a Bible's width.
Is it the Gideon's Bible or is it the big old King James?
Is it one of those strong study Bibles or whatever? I don't know. Is it a pocket edition? But he was really something else. He could dance, and also, from what I understand, either his first election, I forgot what office it was, or maybe the second one, but he lost because you know what I'm saying here, don't you? They all got, and he bought them, whatever.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead? You're the history professor. You teach that.
Well, George Washington, back in that day, you didn't have these extended elections and flyers that you just throw away.
Not a whole lot of campaigning.
Not a whole lot. There's a diary account that says the man voted for Washington for the House of Burgesses because on the courthouse lawn, Washington provided whiskey and everybody else was providing beer. So he voted for Washington.
Yeah, exactly. Because at first, the way I understand it, I could be wrong, you tell me, first election, he thought that was beneath him, and he did not buy any alcohol at all. And of course, he knew he was a good guy. He knew he was qualified for the job, so he didn't partake in that. That was politics, and that was beneath him, whatever. And he lost. And so what you're talking about the second time, he basically bought the alcohol, and they all got drunk and voted for George Washington.
And unlike his opponent, he brought the good stuff, and he won. And as they say, the rest is history.
And the rest, now you know the rest of the story or whatever. So back to the rules. Let's go, Mr. Video Man. Let's go back to see what else we have there for some of the rules of civility from George Washington, which are still quite applicable for this day.
All right, so the fifth one, if you cough, sneeze, sigh, or yawn,
yes, please.
Do it not loud, but privately. I mean, that is so relevant for today.
It is. And for whatever reason, we don't do it. I can remember as a kid, some of my classmates, I never did, but they all went to finishing school. But we were taught that. We were taught that in school. We were like yelled at school and punished for that sort of thing, speaking out loud, using our outside voice, that sort of thing. I don't know that's being taught anymore. Sleep not when others speak, especially when you go to church on Sunday, right?
Or class.
Or class.
Just in case any students watching.
I got you. Sit not when others stand. Speak not when you should hold your peace. Walk not on when others stop. What about that?
Well, shut up when others are talking.
And we all should learn that.
Walk not when others stop. You're walking with someone and they come to a halt. You come to a halt. Don't go off and leave them. Which it's more relevant then than now, because I've seen students drive from their apartment to campus, which is like 100 feet. But they walked everywhere back in the day.
If you know somebody who lives in New York City, they're thin because they walk everywhere. Put not off your cloths in the presence of others, nor go out your chamber half dressed. Well, hello.
Half the students in class would have to go put on some clothes then, but that is spot on. In fact, I need to post that for my daughters because they tend to run.
I got you. Let's go down to number 9. Spit not in the fire. I guess that was especially applicable back then. Nor stoop low before it, neither put your hands into the flames to warm them, nor set your feet upon the fire, especially if there be meat before it.
That is just a sound rule. If meat is cooking on the fire, don't put your feet on the meat.
Oh my God! They did that?
Well,
or spit in the fire? Oh!
But you think about the rule, and you've got a
no, thank you.
fire.
Cancel my order.
You've got a fire in the fireplace, especially at a tavern or public area. Someone comes in from the cold. First thing they do is go to the fire. What do? They put their So they're putting their hands over the fire, or they block everybody else's access off to the heat by the presence of their body over the fire.
I got you.
Or they put their feet up on the hearth to warm their feet, so their feet are near the meat.
Oh my gosh, those were different days. Let's go back to our rules here. Okay, shift not yourself in the sight of others or gnaw your nails. Oh, thank you for that.
We don't have to explain 11.
No, I don't think that. The first part, I think we won't. Shake not the head, feet or legs, not roll the eyes, lift not one eyebrow higher than the other, wry not the mouth, and bedew no man's face with your spittle. By approaching too near him when you speak. In other words, give me my space.
Give me my those
space.
People that always are, what's the modern term, up in your grill.
Up in your grill, baby. And it's just amazing this all still works. Kill no vermin as fleas, lice, ticks, and in the sight of others. If you see any filth or thick spittle, put your foot dexterously upon it, be upon the cloths of your companions. Put it off privately, and if it be upon your claws, return thanks to him who puts it off. And they started thanks with capital T. I wonder why or whatever. But what does that mean?
Well, somebody, what's the term? Gleats on you, inadvertently spits on you, and someone else sees
sometimes.
it.
You got some George Washington books right there.
I do.
Can you recommend some?
I can.
Because I love history.
The best.
Show it to the camera. There you go. Washington.
There you go. Douglas Southall Freeman's Washington. Now, this is an abridged version of Southall Freeman's work. The original is 7 volumes long.
Oh my goodness.
So that's the definitive work. But the abridgment is quite good as well.
So this would be good if you just want to know a little
bit about Washington. If you just want a one volume, you're on a budget and you want 1 volume on George Washington, this is the one to go
notes
to.
Right there.
The one to avoid is Joseph Ellis's His Excellency George Washington.
I hate to say that, but I think I have that. Can I see just for a second?
George Ellis is a modern historian that wants to bring everybody down to the common folk.
I hate to say this, but I actually have that. I actually have that, and you're right. It wasn't that good.
You see how much I didn't even take the price tag off.
There you go.
Political.
Oh.
Henry Cabot Lodge, who was Senate Majority Leader during the Woodrow Wilson administration. In fact, saved us from the Treaty of Versailles. A powerhouse. He dominated the Senate for like 30 or 40 years. He was a good friend of Theodore Roosevelt. And this is a good political.
Well, like I said before, there's things about him that we were never taught. A lot of stuff about cherry trees or whatever, but he was a smart man. He was a very able military leader, extraordinary. But again, he was quite the politician. He did not want to be the president or whatever, but he was very good at it. Very good at it.
You know, I think the greatest accomplishment of George Washington, you know, in winning the American Revolution, that's great. But George Washington at the time, 1783, when the colonies have secured their independence, they're now states. They're beginning to put together the Articles of Confederation. They're a nation. They are. George Washington at that moment is arguably one of the most powerful men in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes before Congress, Christmas, December 25th, 1863, 1783, and he lays his sword on the table. One of the amazing scenes of that moment is when he walked into Congress, no one stood. He walked down to the front of the room, laid his sword on the table, and then every congressman stood up out of reverence for Washington.
They knew he was special.
He laid the power down and walked away and went back to Mount Vernon. He hoped for the rest of his days.
Because that's where he wanted to stay. He was a farmer. He loved being a farmer.
You know, and as a farmer, he was one of the first to engage in what they would call today sustainability. He wanted his Mount Vernon to provide everything he needed, so he had to buy nothing external.
Explain that.
He tried to grow his own grapes to make his own wine. He tried to grow a variety of fruits and vegetables so that he could have everything he needed for the year.
Yeah.
He tried to grow enough hogs and cattle to take care of the needs of his operation. He tried to grow enough hemp to make rope so he didn't have to buy everything he could do.
Sustainability.
He tried to make it sustainable.
It's amazing you say that, because I don't think it was Washington. Was it Hamilton or was it Thomas Jefferson that said the biggest problem that we're going to have is bigger cities?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. I'm telling you, if you live in a big city, I'm sorry, I've done it before myself. I'm so glad my commute to work is 5 minutes. But living in an anthill will drive you crazy.
That's right.
And sometimes I think that's why we have road rage, we have problems, we have whatever, is people are not meant to live on top of each other. Robert Redford, who's certainly not a theologian or politician, but I'll quote him for this. He said time, you know, when he lived in New York City, he goes, when you live in a big city, you just exist. And he moved to Utah, and he says, now I'm living. And that's what I love so much about living in East Texas. I love having some property down south of here, whatever, is I'm not sustainable. I still have to go to the grocery store and buy food, but you just feel like you're living. And these guys knew that these guys were not unlike us.
No. Now, I wouldn't dare put myself in the same classification with George Washington. And the unfortunate thing is we're not teaching the virtues of Washington.
Yes.
We're not teaching his sacrifice. We focus on things that actually George Washington had no control over. The fact George Washington owned slaves. He couldn't do anything about those slaves. Those were not his slaves. They belonged to Martha, and they were entailed to Martha, which meant ancestors had bequeathed them to her, and she couldn't get rid of them.
And his children were stepchildren, right?
And his children were stepchildren. He had no, and that's probably a good thing for the nation.
What about the last book here?
This is a very unique take on George Washington. By the title Patriarch, it's George Washington as the father of the country, and it's more about the precedents that he set, the way he led. So many precedents. You know, Washington taking over the presidency, everything was new. It had not been done before.
He made it up as he went along.
Even from what we call the president, you know.
This has a good poll quote here from Hugh Sidey from Time Magazine, back when Time Magazine was Time Magazine,
it was a real
as
magazine.
opposed to a website like it is now or whatever. So anyway, our time is getting away from us before we get you out of here, because I know you got to go run an errand. What should we know about George Washington that we don't?
That George Washington hated political parties.
Yeah.
He hated them.
Preach it.
Warned the nation in his farewell address.
This would happen.
Yeah. He said, here's the two things that you fear. This is the two things that endanger the country. Political parties, because political parties will come to exist for their own ends and not the good of the nation.
Say that again.
They will exist for their own ends. Democrats are concerned about maintaining the party, growing the party, not the good of the nation. Republicans growing the party, not the sustainability, survivability of the nation.
Absolutely.
They give lip service to being national players and loving the country, but they really love the party more, and they're willing to play chicken to see their parties grow. All right. Second thing he warned about, entangling alliances. That the interests of other countries, the interests of the world, are not necessarily the interest of the United States. And once we start getting entangled in other countries' affairs, we're going to get sucked into wars, and we're going to get sucked into wars that aren't in our national best interest.
That's very poignant. And that's very, very poignant. And again, but you hear it from both sides. Well, we need to go to war because we're in power. Then the next time it's like we don't need to go to war because we're not in.
The Henry Cabot Lodge, the book I just put up there, Henry Cabot Lodge is the man who blocked American entry into the League of Nations, the Treaty of Versailles, because it would violate Washington's precedent and get the United States involved in an entangling alliance. Now, after World War II, Franklin Roosevelt changes that, and we have the United Nations.
It's like you study this.
Yeah.
Anything else before we go?
Read a book about Washington.
Right.
But don't fall in the trap of the Parson Weems tales of Washington. Washington was a man, and nothing is more telling than Washington saying, I look at myself and I know I'm mortal and I know I can misjudge myself. My character can delude myself into thinking I'm better than I am. So I don't trust myself, so I trust others to look at my behavior and make sure I'm doing the right things.
To hold me in check.
To hold me in check.
That's great. All right. James Newsom, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us at home. And remember, everyone has a right to my or our opinion, and we'll see you next time.
Ja, hejsan sådant, civility. Who she gonna get? What she gonna get? Something wonderful. Been a man of crap. Don't ever, but don't. That's something.